Good morning and welcome to the Government IT Breakfast Forum, an event that is co-hosted by Howard University and REI Systems. The purpose of this event is to try and address a range of government IT challenges and to offer both a practical real-world experience from government folks as well as an academic perspective and research perspective from Howard University. Without question, REI's interest in launching this event series is to bring more diversity, both of ideas and of people, to government technology in order that we can help strengthen and improve government performance by leveraging that technology. In this case, we're focusing on use cases around artificial intelligence. And what we found in some previous research that REI has undertaken is lots of government folks, in fact, more than 2/3 of government folks surveyed said they thought that artificial intelligence had the most potential to improve government performance over any other form of IT. But very few, in fact, far less than 5% of those same survey respondents said their agency was using IT. And so what we thought in conversations with our colleagues at Howard University would be that it's a great idea to try and find and identify and be able to hear from government agencies who've actually put artificial intelligence into practice. So what we've assembled for you today here is a panel of folks who will not only tell you about the use cases, how and why they're using artificial intelligence in their agencies, but they'll also share with you some experiences about what were the hurdles they had to overcome to implement AI, as well as what are some of the specific types of value and benefits that they have found from artificial intelligence. My name is Jeff Myers. I'm a senior director with REI Systems, and I'd like to turn it over now to my colleague, Dr. Harry Keeling, who directs the Department of Computer Science at Howard University. Dr. Keeling?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming. I hope this is going to be a very informative and lively discussion. So my role here is to present answers to basically two questions in regard to the topic today, and that is, what are we doing in higher ed, and what should we be doing in higher ed? So welcome everybody again, and hope we'll all get the benefit we wish. Thank you.
Great. So we will have approximately 7 to 10 minutes from each of our four panelists to talk a little bit about what use cases they have been associated with. And then we'll have Dr. Keeling, as he's described, to kind of give a little bit of the academic perspective. And finally, that will take overall total about 45 minutes to an hour. We'll ask at the moment that you hold your questions until the meeting's presentation component, that 45 minutes to an hour, has concluded. At that stage, we invite you to submit your questions. You can do that using the chat, which is our preferred mechanism. That way, if 3 different people have the same question, then we'll be able to kind of reconcile that and ask it once. I'll serve as the moderator for that. On occasion, if you've got an interesting perspective, we'll invite you to unmute yourself, or we will unmute you and invite you to ask the question in person. If you're able, please try and direct the question to a specific panelist. And with that introduction, with that overview, let me offer an introduction to our panelists. First joining me is a man, Andre Mendez, who's currently the Chief Information Officer for the Department of Commerce. He's previously served in a similar role as the CIO for the Broadcasting Board of Governors, which oversees the Voice of America. And actually, at that organization, he was subsequently elevated to be the CEO. So Andre's got lots of senior executive experience. He also, in fact, where I first met him, served as the Chief Information Officer and Chief Strategy Officer for Special Olympics International. So Andre's got a wide range of experience in technology arenas across the globe. Secondly, we'll have Nathan Manzotti, who is the director of GSA's Technology Transformation Service, and he manages a government-wide artificial intelligence community of practice. So Nathan brings a special perception and perspective on what folks around government are trying to do with AI, as well as drawing upon his own experience at GSA and previous experience with data and analytics usage at the Customs and Border Protection Bureau, as well as the Defense Health Agency in the private sector. Third, we'll hear from Avital Purcher, who is Assistant to the Chief Data Officer at the National Science Foundation. He has a background in both science education, and he's frankly a much more serious scientist than many of us, with the exception of perhaps Dr. Keeling. Avital holds a PhD in chemical biology and microbial pathogenesis. So his use cases for AI may be a little different than ours, in addition to having some perspective as to kind of where NSF's priorities may be in terms of funding AI development. Finally, amongst the panelists, we'll hear from Andrew Zeswitz, who's the Chief Technology Officer and my colleague at REI Systems. He's dedicated his entire career within the private sector to serving a wide range of federal agencies. Those agencies range from the Food and Drug Administration, Health Resources and Services Administration, the Patent and Trademark Office, as well as a number of components within the Department of Homeland Security and a number of other agencies. So please join me in welcoming our panelists, and let's turn it over to Andre Mendez. Andre?
Very good. Thank you so much, Jeff. Appreciate it, and thank you for all the panelists. I'm already looking forward to hearing your particular sections. So at the Department of Commerce, of course, it is an incredibly diverse environment where we have 13 bureaus with an enormous diversity of missions and charters, from the USPTO Patent and Trade Office to NOAA with weather. To the census, to NIST in the standards, arena, to a lot of other smaller bureaus that do very, very important work across all areas of the government. And within that realm, a lot of our bureaus have been using AI for quite a long time. We understand, all of the excitement around generative AI that has, taken a hold of the marketplace over the last year, but the reality is that AI efforts have been around for a long time in a variety of areas, but mostly, sort of in the classic AI arenas associated with operations and production. I'm going to talk about 3 or 4 cases, both cases that have been deployed and are in practice already, have been for a few years, and also some nascent areas where we believe there's tremendous opportunity for leveraging artificial intelligence technologies. A lot of the machine learning that you're going to be here described, again, has been around for a while. Let me start with the U.S. Patent and Trade Office. The burden associated with assessing, evaluating a patent application is very substantial, and it puts an enormous onus on the patent examiners that have to go through reams and reams and reams of information that continues to grow at an astonishing rate. And so in that realm, we have used machine learning to help these patent examiners really dig throughout the entire database of patents and look at the potential correlations from a couple of standpoints. One, to evaluate the uniqueness of the new intellectual property that is being proffered, and that is attempting to reach patents, so that we can ascertain, faster, cheaper, and better whether or not it is unique enough to warrant the awarding of a patent. And that is a very, very substantial body of work. Also, another area in which this is important is in the area of fraud detection for the type of patents that are put forth that have illicit purposes associated with them. And so in that realm, it has also been extremely helpful in identifying the patterns that would be able to pull out and cull out the ones that are really not doing the right things and that have, sort of nefarious intent. It has, by and large, been a very successful effort, although there were some initial jitters at first, as you can imagine, on the part of the population of patent examiners in terms of how it would affect their work and also how it potentially could threaten their work eventually. And so those fears have by and large been allayed. And what we see is an environment where the speed of the process has been, substantially accelerated. And the efficiency of the process has continued to increase over time as the machine learning continues to build its knowledge base. and its ability to really filter through content, we've seen it become more and more effective at aiding the patent examiners dealing with the enormous amount of work that they have to deal with on a regular basis. So that process has been going on for a while, and it just keeps getting better. And it has, without a shadow of a doubt, resulted in tremendous benefit to the taxpayers, and of course, especially to the population that pays the fees for the U.S. Patent Trade Office in the form of patent applications and trademark applications. So very exciting, and we expect that process to continue to get improved as the body of knowledge throughout the world continues to increase, both in terms of cumulative and also the acceleration of patent submissions. Another area where the Department of Commerce and one of its bureaus has also done remarkable work is in the area of forecasting for extreme weather events. As you can imagine, over the last few decades, the NOAA has been able to build a very substantial body of knowledge and database of weather events, and all of the associated metadata and physical data that accompanies them. And so over time, via machine learning, they have really been able to start narrowing some of the exactness of the models that are brought to the table, and that process continues to be, improved with every single iteration. So when you look at, for example, a couple of the weather events, very dramatic weather events that took place over the summer, you saw that the prediction models, at least within a 24 to 48 hour range, in terms of the direction of the storms, the intensity of the storms, the intensity of storm surge, the evaluation of flood plains and their effects on the flood plains has been dramatically improved. And so if you recall specifically, the one that veered straight up on a 90-degree angle up the Gulf of Mexico and straight into the crux of the Panhandle and the main area of Florida, that pattern was very, very well devised, and I think a lot of that is by virtue of the models continually being improved and updated through the machine learning algorithms. And through the careful evaluation of previous data in comparison to on-the-ground sensor activity and data collection. So one can easily surmise that over time that will be saving a substantial amount of lives. Maybe not property, because you can't move the houses and everything else, but from an evacuation standpoint, that has been I believe a very, very valuable exercise. NOAA is also experimenting now in terms of sustainability. For example, with the fisheries, they are looking at both species and counts for particular schools of fish in particular areas, and they're doing that through leveraging artificial intelligence, visual components, and the capture of underwater video, so that they can look at images and let the engines really calculate the number of species and the number of fish in each one of the species, and how they change over time, as they relate to weather conditions, tidal patterns, and so on and so forth. So very exciting stuff that has a wide range of applications. In the less, let's say operational, but more in the generative AI arena, ITA, the International Trade Administration, is now attempting to experiment with the ability of multi-language, AI capabilities in order to facilitate the generation of documents in a much faster way that need to be distributed across the entire world for, in over 100 countries and in 60, 70, 80 languages, so that rather than have to go through an entirely manual or human-driven translation effort, that you can leverage AI generative AI in order to do a lot of the initial work, and then limiting the humans to more of an editing capability rather than the generation of the entire content for newsletters, for communiques that need to be put out in very short order, very fast sequence. And so a completely different environment, as you can imagine, because all of a sudden, we're driving into a very, let's say, interactive, operation that is not driven by operations themselves, but by the distribution of information and the ability to do so far more efficiently. So there are plenty of other examples. The census is working very hard at trying to figure out how to leverage artificial intelligence in order to have an even more accurate census in 2030, and also to conduct more accurate surveys or leverage data across surveys so that you don't have to have as many interactions with the public, but we can still have a very high degree of confidence in the data that is generated by both the combination of some data collection as well as extrapolation via AI engines. So a lot of opportunity for improvement of overall government processes altogether. And with that, I think I've am at my limit of 7 minutes, so I'm going to pass it to the next panelist.
Thank you, Andre. I think, Nathan, you're up.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to join this event and speak to you all this morning. My name is Nathan Manzotti. I work at the GSA Centers of Excellence. In the Centers of Excellence, so I specifically work in the Data Analytics and AI Center of Excellence. We have about 6 centers of excellence. We have cloud, we have customer experience, innovation, adoption. I'm probably leaving out 1 or 2. But in the Centers of Excellence, we work really across 3 verticals. There's the Center of Excellence, which is a fee-for-service consultancy that works with other federal agencies through interagency agreement to work on their IT modernization initiatives. Then we have the AI community of practice, which exists to share best practices and facilitate communication amongst people in the government working on AI. And we also work on government-wide best practices. So I'll start there because it's the foundation for how we've done some of our other work. A few years ago, we published the AI Guide for Government, which is a set of steps, guidance for how agencies can start to approach preparing to adopt AI and ML, use cases. And then we also developed, after that, the AI Capability Maturity Model, which has 7 different areas from people ops. Let me go to my notes here to make sure I get them right. People ops, cloud ops, SecOps, DevOps, data ops, ML ops, and then AI ops. And we're working on version 2 of that now. Specifically, I developed the data ops layer of that, and that's where a lot of my work has focused. So in the Centers of Excellence, like I said, we work with external clients, so we're working with other agencies most of the time, and we see use cases come into the Centers of Excellence in kind of 2 different tranches. One being narrow scoped applications of machine learning to solve an automation task, and the other being, enterprise-wide AI readiness / data maturity work to mature the capabilities of the organization overall. And that's where the AI Capability Maturity Model has helped us to, we've leveraged that to help agencies make progress. So a use case that I'll highlight on the kind of narrow scopes automation implementation side is we worked on an image classification task with grading the marbling of meat fairly recently. And that was with the USDA in its prototype project. Like Andre mentioned, this project was not state-of-the-art machine learning, cutting edge, right? An image classification task, that's been a widely applied use of machine learning for a long time now, and this was no different. We developed a small model using Keras, which is pretty much a wrapper around TensorFlow, basic convolutional neural network that using labeled data would look at the pieces of meat and then determine which tranche it falls into in terms of marbling, right? The real work with that project, rather than building the model, was with journey mapping the manual processes. So working with the domain experts to understand how they perform this task manually without any kind of machine augmentation, and then labeling the images. Once we had that, trained the model, and then evaluated the outputs and had to make some tweaks, and we were able to get a fairly accurate model with a fairly small amount of data. So, identifying those use cases that are kind of quick wins, I think, is an important task, and one that can pay dividends. So, and then, once the prototype is there, then the bigger task becomes production implementation and rollout across. You can imagine at federal agencies nationwide and has thousands of facilities, building the model is the easy part. And that's why I think that the majority of our work has focused around enterprise-wide AI readiness and data maturity assessment, and a few projects that I've been involved with that. At the Surface Transportation Board, we did an enterprise-wide data maturity assessment, the prototype of centralized data repository. When we approach that kind of work, we use the AI capability maturity model on the back end usually, and then we'll evaluate across 5 different key areas: security and architecture, data governance, quality and metadata, user-centered analytics, cognitive insights and AI, and then people and culture. So that's really like a full spectrum view on how does the agency treat their data, and then, as part of the cognitive insights and AI, what are those low-hanging fruit use cases that you can immediately prototype, add some, machine learning capabilities to, and provide a lot of value to, the agency and the citizen itself. Another narrow scope use case that us at the Center of Excellence have been integrating into our daily work is, just really augmenting, producing some of these deliverables using AI capabilities, like during consulting work. So that doesn't mean that we're just, agency hires us and we're using AI to say, yeah, this is what you should do. Congratulations, we spit this out from the machine. But rather, what I did was I took, so I'll avoid giving a endorsement to a product, okay? But I took an LLM that was accessible through an API and then created a wrapper around it to easily call some functions within Google Sheets to say, like, take this piece of text and bulletize it. Categorize this into one of these 6 categories, and so on. And doing that just sped up the delivery by probably 5 times, and allows us to do work a lot faster. So looking for those opportunities as well with this non-sensitive data, and you can employ a tool quickly, has been successful for us. Some of the other work that we've done through the Center of Excellence, a number of years ago, we worked with the DoD's Joint Artificial Intelligence Center to support the development of an AI platform to be used across the DoD. We work with the VA to develop their AI Center of Excellence. So we've done a number of things. Now I'll move on to the artificial intelligence community of practice. So the AI COP is currently about 3,100 federal members. And so the program has grown quite a bit, and we're excited about the future with that. This year, we conducted 3 applied AI challenges: the healthcare challenge, the large language models challenge, and I'm blanking on the 3rd challenge. I apologize about that. But, we've had some really successful events. That's the point. One of the biggest ones was we partnered with OMB and Stanford HAI as a response to the AI Training Act, and we held a series for all federal employees on AI, and we had over over 4,800 federal employees that attended that event. So that was massively successful. We're working to expand that collaboration with academia to continue to deliver training. And as a result of this executive order that just came out, there's a number of new things that we're starting. So yeah, that's a little bit about the AI COE and the COP, and I guess I'll turn it back to you, Wendy.
So, Avital, are you able to turn your camera on and come back online for your presentation?
Hi, good morning. I believe my camera is showing itself as on. Is it
You're
not
on.
showing up?
You're there.
Okay, super. I'll start with apologizing. I frankly don't usually come late to a meeting, but I came down rather ill yesterday, and it was so bad that I forgot to just even set my alarm. I just collapsed after some hyperventilation and vomiting, and so unexpected, and my slides aren't even finished, but I'm excited to be talking here today. I have some visual slides. I think I'm going to skip over, let's see, 7 minutes. Yeah, let's start with this. Since I came late, I didn't get to see this. Did anybody talk at all about how we're defining AI? Or I didn't get, sorry, I meant to say because I came late, I didn't get to check. Has anybody discussed how we're defining AI? By chance?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, cool. I threw that in. So this is a part of some slides that I've been sharing internally. Nice to meet all the panelists. I'm looking for my share screen. Sorry. Can you see the screen here?
Yes.
Okay, super. So my name is Avital Percher. I am the assistant to the Chief Data Officer. I am also NSF's responsible AI official. And I get to talk a little bit about I wanted to talk a little bit about a dimension that I wasn't really expecting to be, or seemed from the pre-meetings wasn't exactly covered here, which is the culture and community dimensions of using AI in a federal agency. And so just to grab some slides while thinking about the meeting yesterday, and this is a slide that I've been showing to people. It's from the NDAA. It's the definition of AI. It is not something that I can use when talking to people who don't come from an AI background. By the way, I am one of them. I am a molecular biologist by training who turned into a data wonk while switching over to working in government. And I would just consider this somewhat of a necessary but admittedly bloated way to define AI. So I've been using a different visual when I talk to folks about this. And I think this is one of the most helpful mechanisms of talking about the different modes or types of AI. And it's divided into 3 waves. The first wave is stuff that is more automated, direct, clear stepwise activities that there's complete clarity on what's being done, things like metadata extraction or robotic process automation. But where it's getting confusing is that when I go and talk to governance boards at NSF, or the governance board at NSF, which has experts in statistics, in evaluation and assessment, when I go to talk with even my own boss, who has a deep data background but isn't that familiar with AI, we've been needing to break it down and somewhat define that we're a little bit beyond the first wave, and we're firmly. That was tongue-in-cheek. We're firmly in the space of the second wave. We have things like generative AI and natural language processing, which are being deeply explored at NSF. And so that's the space that I'm trying to remind people that we're kind of in right now if we're using this visual reference. Just to cover, if this hasn't been discussed yet, that the landscape of the federal AI landscape is kind of what you see on the screen. I don't believe, yesterday was a little bit of a haze for me. I don't believe the OMB guidelines have come out yet. It's been discussion of it being drafted. The EO on AI is taking up a lot of people's time and reading through it. A rather big document and figuring out how to apply AI throughout federal agencies and what needs to be done. And then there's actually a small thing that doesn't get talked about so much because it is admittedly relatively small. But EO 13960 is talking about the promoting a trustworthy AI in the federal government, is actually requiring federal agencies to share all the various applications of AI in the agency. So as the risks and the scope of the AI tools increase, there will be increasing pressure on agencies to very clearly report what it is that they are doing in the AI space. So we were given, again, I don't know if this was shared, but we were given a few panel prompts, and I'm going to just shift a little bit. We were asked of what needs did you look for that AI could meet? And I am a little bit focused on the space of what capacities we need to be developing at NSF in order to enable us to use AI safely. And our approach has been our approach has been to establish the first foundational framework of understanding of how to safely use it and who should use it and why. And so we've been working on some items that are on the screen here, the notion of, do we have clarity of the responsibilities? Does leadership understand who is responsible for approving a new AI tool? Do we have a way to make sure that anybody who wants to use AI, I'm assuming everyone's on the call here because there is this interest in using AI, and other people who don't have AI backgrounds. And so the question is, do we have a collective understanding of the risks and guardrails? Does everybody who wants to use an AI tool have a way to learn what is the appropriate safe use of AI or what they're applying it? Now, this might not be relevant for things such as meat marbling, because the outputs are very clear. If somebody wants to check it, they can quickly just compare visually what they're looking at. But the space that I am seeing AI it is various applications that it is not as clear an output, and there is a need to at least mitigate the risk of a tool not being used properly. The final item is the scope and purpose of AI applications, but giving leadership a sense of what is being done within the agency. Again, that relates to EO 13960, and as it relates to just being able to say we have an understanding of how the AI landscape is evolving. So to do this, we have an AI policy. We require that anybody who's developing an AI system report the methods and purpose of their tool. We have a simple use case form that people complete out. Our data governing board, the Evidence Act and Data Governance Group, reviews these applications, endorses it. It's documented. We have a catalog of all the various AI uses within the agency. And this is effectively establishing a way that if let's say I am a newcomer at NSF, and I want to be able to learn where to go and what tools I can use, there will be a single space where they can go to that really gives them a full scope. That's particularly relevant for things like generative AI, where people want to use it for various applications, and it's currently commercial GAI. And we're trying to make it very clear what the approved space is. This one is just an example of how it looks like, where we see, there's all these boxes where people can click on, and then it gives them an example of, or directs them to the right space of the AI use cases. I think I'm cutting it close. I have one more minute. I will note that there is one difference another difference about what the conversation is having at NSF. It is the nature of the value obtained. If you think about some of the examples that were given earlier, they are very promising and exciting examples of things that effectively are reducing the time and reducing the time needed by people to do the task that was previously possible. So it reduces the time that was required or was entirely impossible because nobody had the bandwidth to conduct the activity. What I am more interested in, or what I am equally interested in, is the matter of decision intelligence, helping people, giving people tools that empower their decision-making processes. This is particularly relevant to a grant-making agency. I will emphasize there are no predictive activities for the work that we're doing. We don't, especially for individual proposals being submitted to NSF, so the merit review process. When the review panel looks at the proposal, we do not and will not be using any tools that have any predictive functions in AI. That's an internal approach to this right now. But it is something that's worth noting that the space is of asking what is the value that's being brought is how are we empowering people to drive new capabilities and with new tools, and that can be done with the AI or that can be done with generative AI and AI in general, even just more non-model oriented analytics capabilities. I see I'm coming close to the time. So what are the most significant obstacles you're overcoming? We are, I'm actually rather happy with this, where the order in which things are developing at NSF, which is that we are working on the foundational functions before we're really cranking out the tools. And so the things that are really that I'm working through is the culture and notion of accountability. How do people understand the correct uses for it? How do we understand that the development and the data that is being procured for different models is used correctly in the future, so that the application doesn't drift away from its original intent? And also, how do we make it clear that we're looking to empower and not replace individuals, and make it so that they have a that we're not looking to reduce the number of staff, but we're actually looking to reduce the burden and make it so that people can do more fulfilling work. I think that's a value that my colleagues at NSF agreed with me on, and so I put it here. And those are all my slides.
Great. Thank you very much, Avital. Andy Zeswitz, you are up next.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Andy Zeswitz. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for REI Systems. I am going to keep my comments fairly brief because I know we want to get to a couple of questions, from the audience today. The AI is here. It's here to stay. There's tremendous momentum in industry, but also within organizations to adopt it. We at REI have the opportunity to look across different agencies and see some of these use cases and opportunities. The uses of AI, across federal agencies, where in our space, we see this as there's an opportunity for entity enrichment, where the identification of attributes around a particular entity or object. I mean, this could be a patent application and identifying text or other pieces of information that relate to that. It could also have direct relationship with inspections and inspection data, and looking to more stochastically understand the enrichment of the object that's being evaluated or an assignment that's being made. Identification of data is also a fairly significant use case. How do we better leverage artificial intelligence to find that, I don't want to say needle in the haystack, but to elevate the intent with which a user or a system is looking for particular data? Somewhat related to that is also kind of a recommendation engine, not necessarily, I wouldn't say in terms of predictive analytics, but again, elevating results in an unbiased way to allow the user to better have visibility into similar types of things that they might be looking for. This could be documents. It could also be looking at relevant principal investigators to evaluate a proposal for a small business innovation research grant, those types of things. Looking at expert matching, right? Looking at the identification of a relevant inspector to for any number of use cases, whether that's within FDA or elsewhere within HHS. There's a number of use cases I want to point out that are available, been published on GSA's website. There's an AI inventory available at gsa.gov/AI-inventory. These are use cases that have evolved over time. I anticipate that, and I'm sure Nathan is advocating this as well, but that they continue to evolve and continue to be published. So those are some of the external use cases. There are also a lot of internal use cases for the use of artificial intelligence. And some of it, we talk about the creation of models, but it can also be the leveraging of tools that are available within the marketplace. I don't want to necessarily go and make this a free advertising platform, but there are tools that allow for the review of a document in real time while you're editing, right? So when crafting a document and removing passive voice, these tools, leverage AI to be able to interpret what it is that you're saying and make recommendations, can actually make things of substantially higher quality. But it also can it can support the learning of an individual so that they become more impactful in their job over time. Also, just something like generating job descriptions, things that are fairly routine as an organization is growing. It's not that the generative AI is going to match exactly what it is that you're looking for, but it might be a 75% solution that you can have access to within within seconds, and then spend minutes to modify that over time rather than crafting things from scratch. From an aspirational aspect, I think one of the biggest things that's on my mind is the use of customer experience to identify those use cases that are going to provide the most impact for the user to, from an AI perspective. When I think about services, the large part of the government is providing services to citizens, providing grants to support citizen services. So how can we look at that journey? How can we look at the use case and identify the highest pain points and those that are most appropriate for an AI solution to be able to support? I look at that from the perspective of facilitating the user, but also from the perspective of efficient spending of government funding. There's the use of responsible AI. I think that's been covered, with the executive order, making sure that as we are developing tools, or as we're integrating tools, or creating potentially multi-mode AI architectures, that we are ensuring that privacy is protected, that safety is maintained, that results are, by its very nature, sometimes they're not exactly, it's not a binary explainable result, but they have to be defensible. They have to be testable. And then ultimately ensuring that bias is removed, that training data sets are providing equal and unilateral access to information, that a model's not being trained based on information that is leaning toward a particular demographic. These tools have to be representative and empower equally across all stakeholders that are leveraging these tool sets. Some of the hurdles, governance is one of the big ones that I see. A lot of these are new. So having these governance models in place to ensure that the guardrails are understood, that the tools that have been reviewed and approved, the models that have been reviewed and approved by federal technology reference models, that they're available, and that the federal customers as well as the contractors know what's the sandbox that we can play in. Data cleanliness, that's always a topic, but ultimately it comes back to trust as well. The usage of the models over time, building that trust, modifying, tweaking to ensure that corrections are made. One of the statements that Avital made, it really resonates with me as well. It's the empowerment of thought leaders, the empowerment of the workforce, increasing accessibility. Not replacing workers, but really potentially making more of an equitable workplace, so that people can do jobs with meaning and have value. I know I'm coming up on time here, so let me stop there. But appreciate the opportunity to share these thoughts today and to also hear from our other panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. And why don't we turn it over to Dr. Keelan to share with us the perspectives from academia, both on kind of what is being offered to students that are preparing for these roles now, and perhaps what might be needed by federal agencies who are seeking people capable of helping them succeed in using AI.
Oh, thank you, Jeff. Let me first introduce myself. I'm the Director of Computer Science at Howard University. I've been there 3 decades plus. I've seen AI evolve from early research that I did to support my doctorate degree. I'll say a few words about that in a minute. But right now, the new technology on the horizon is obviously the generative AI and ChatGPT. So let me first say a few words about research. So AI research is receiving a lot of attention and investment from both the public sector and the private sector. And I think government and some of these huge multinational technology corporations are obviously recognizing the potential of this transformative new technology and are trying to consequently invest in preparing a new generation of application developers, skilled researchers to meet this demand. And Howard University and other institutions are reacting to this by introducing a lot of new courses, a lot of new uses of AI in technology in their courses. And students are pursuing degrees in computer science and related fields with increasing attractiveness of AI research due to its potential for career prospects and being able to contribute to some of the new tools that are being developed almost daily in this area. So research is booming, and there's a lot of dollars flowing into higher ed to support the development of not just basic concepts, but also supporting research in new algorithms for AI. I want to say a few words about my particular research area, and that is intelligent tutoring, or a more modern term, adaptive learning. And to describe this in 25 words or less, this is a study of how AI can be used to individualize the learning experience for students, directing personalized content and also delivering that content to students in various ways that are supported by AI. I'm interested in this area, have been for some time. If you have any specific questions, you can ask later. But let me secondly answer the question about what is being taught. Well, obviously, some of the more foundational aspects of AI concepts in machine learning, with a lot of focus currently on generative AI and neural nets. We're introducing in the spring new courses in natural language processing. Obviously, we're seeing AI in our daily lives with our personal assistants. And so applications are being developed with AI interfaces, and natural language being one of those. Also, computer vision is an area that we're introducing in our graduate courses, as well as specific undergraduate courses. And something that I'm heading at Howard is a use of AI in robotics, and introducing students to robotics and careers in robotics. We also are focusing some attention on the use of neural nets in being able to represent knowledge in various ways, making it useful for various applications. The third question I wanted to address real quickly is what should be taught. And what should be taught is to be seeing new applications, new breakthroughs in this evolving technology And that course is going to be charted, certainly by what comes out of our research in this area. But I want to say a few words about how we should look at introducing AI to our own personal lives, to the lives of our family, as well as our loved ones, and to the people who are in our charge in our particular jobs. I think the old adage is still very true that the first impressions are lasting impressions. And so what I believe is important here is that we introduce this technology in a very positive way. And I introduce this to students. I implore my colleagues, my professors at Howard to introduce AI in a very positive way in their classes to stay abreast, of course, of what's going on in this technology. And so where does the ethics, and one of my panelists, I think it was Mr. Pritchard, alluded to this, and that is, where do we draw the line ethically in the use of some of these new tools? I think we need to introduce the ethics of it very quickly in the lives of our potential employees and, in my case, students. And I think there's a line that I like to think about when I try to answer this ethical question, and that is, are we using these tools as decision supports, or are we making them decision makers? And I think when we cross that line, I think we start to muddy the water a bit in terms of the ethics of this use. So I often ask my students about how they feel. What do they think is the ethical and positive and negative uses of the technology? And quite surprisingly, students are not using it to cheat on exams or anything of that nature, but they're using it as a tool to increase their language skills. And these new tools that are built around the generative AI technology is introducing new ways of expressing knowledge. And as I just asked my capstone group to produce a document, a specification document for their projects. And I said, well, write it in your own language first, and then try to generate it through ChatGPT and see, what ways in which you can express that same knowledge in a more understandable and more clear way. And they're becoming very surprised in terms of how it's increasing their vocabulary, increasing their ability to express their thoughts. And so that's a very positive use of it. And then also there's negative use of it when you're using it to do term papers and that sort of thing. And there was a recent study of higher education, and students were asked, do you or would you use it as a tool to generate a term paper? And 95% of them said absolutely not, and they think it's not a good use of their educational dollars to have a tool do their schoolwork for them. So that was quite surprising. So I think in answering the question about what we should teach, I think that's a question that will be answered as we see how society is embracing these tools. I think just like anything else that we've encountered in our lifetimes that's considered, transformative, it's a double-edged sword. Can be used for good, it can be used for bad. And I think what we need to do as in higher ed and as well as in government is think about how we introduce this to others and make sure that first introduction is a very positive use of AI. So I think that's all I want to say at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Keelan. So I'm going to invite each of you to any member of our audience to type questions into the chat. As always, for those who don't know me, I am endlessly curious. So I have a question or two for each of our panelists. And I'd like to start with Andre. Andre, as a chief information officer with experience at several different agencies and now some really interesting use cases for AI, my question for you is, how is it that you persuade or you imagine persuading stakeholders of how much money should be committed to AI by an agency? Because, of course, lots of these technologies aren't free. lots of the cost of people building up and developing their expertise and creating them aren't free. And so my question is, how do you match return on investments? And, you know, you could say, well, for example, with the weather forecasting, we've saved 20 lives, or you could say with the patent exam search, you know, we've made it so that people our patent examiners are 20% more productive. Tell me a little bit about what you found successful to kind of persuade folks, hey, this is worth the investment.
So in the classical AI arena, you know, that selling to the appropriators, to OMB and to Congress, it is a long-standing issue, right? They understand how these technologies can be leveraged in order to improve the mission. And we actually have good quantification of how that translates into benefits for the stakeholders in this particular case, of course, the taxpayers. And so that is to a certain degree baked into our budgets already. In the case of you know, generative AI, I think that is by and large a nascent environment, but there is, I think, on the part of OMB, certainly, and on the part of the Federal CIO office, as demonstrated, and on the part of the administration, as demonstrated by the several EOs that have come out, executive orders that have come out in this area, there is a commitment to exploring and properly funding this. Now, of course, that is one step of the equation, right? Then it needs to go to the to Congress for the appropriate, you know, steps to take place so that the funding can be commensurate with both the challenges of implementing it, but also the potential opportunities. In a lot of ways, there is nothing particularly sui generis about AI and funding challenges, right? We had very similar equation with every single generation of technology that has come about. Latest one, of course, being you know, the migration to cloud-based technologies. So that dialogue is constant, right? That dialogue, you know, includes a mixture of demonstrability, but also of expectation based on the evolution, the natural evolution of the technologies. Now, every so often, we encounter a situation where, in response to a crisis or a perceived crisis, there is a more proactive stance that takes place that is bilateral, and that generates faster results in terms of the funding mechanism, which in the federal government, of course, is inherently complicated and not exactly fast moving, right? I mean, between you know, multiple year processes and continuing resolutions and the such, we're all familiar with how this is affected. But for example, in the cybersecurity arena, when it came to the migration to zero trust architecture, what we saw was an alignment of the understanding of the need and urgency for funding. And so that resulted in very fast funding through a variety of different mechanisms, including, for example, at Commerce, the ability granted by Congress for Commerce to actually leverage prior year unspent funds via a mechanism called NEF. You know, and as a result, we saw an acceleration of that process through a special allocation. I wouldn't be surprised if in the AI arena, we see a variety of funding methodologies, including, for example, at Commerce, NEF and other agencies that have that type of capability for using previously expired funds, okay? NEF stands for non-expired, you know, funding. But you are also going to see, you know, proposals being submitted to the TMF, the Technology Modernization Fund, because, you know, there is an incentive to go from a legacy environment, not into last year or last decade's technology, but leapfrogging into the next, you know, potential generation, in this case, including AI. And also special appropriations on the part of Congress that understand the realities of the environment in which we live, where other let's say, other countries, potentially not necessarily friendly countries, will make a substantial investment in this arena, and that investment needs to be matched by the U.S. in order to remain competitive, and to just downright avoid falling behind in what could be, an utterly transformative type of environments. So what I think you're going to see is a mixture of approaches, with some of them being based on demonstrable results, but others being based on expectations, and to a certain degree, a fear of falling behind. And between all of those environments, I think that you will see not necessarily optimum funding, but appropriate enough funding. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. We have never been in a situation where funding is infinite, and so there always needs to be a justification, right? And there also needs to be a seed funding mentality that says that you can't wait for things to prove themselves out in totality before you invest, because you'll be definitely behind the wheel. I'll give you a perfect example. In my previous agency, in 2010, when I first joined it, I instituted a mandate that we were going to migrate to the cloud. And so how do we do that? Well, by 2014, we were 90% cloud-based, well ahead of everybody else in the federal government. But how we did that was by optimizing our investment base, by adopting zero-based budgets, so that we became extremely parsimonious with our funding strategies, and at the same time understanding that there were inefficiencies in place that could be rooted out, and that could be used in a virtuous cycle in order to fund new initiatives that in turn would reduce our costs in other less relevant arenas, creating abstraction layers across the entire technology stack, until we were dedicating the overwhelming majority of our funding to the application layer, where the value is, by leveraging cloud technologies, which at the time, because they were nascent, had a substantial price advantage, right? Until, of course, vendors realized that as their business models changed, they needed to continue to make money. And so the cloud became a little more expensive, and it also became, a little more sophisticated. So you're going to see a plethora of methods, but I think all in all, I expect that the United States, via, public and via the private sector investments, will be well positioned in the AI arena for the near future.
Great. Thank you, Andre. Nathan, this next question is going to be for you, and it's coming from our chat. We have Meredith Bennett saying this has been a great conversation, but she's worried that there may be a mis or underrepresentation of women, other underserved individuals, non-binary. And so my question, Nathan, is you've got a great perspective across government. Can you tell me, and I think that's been a traditional fear about AI, which is that maybe the data we're providing to train our AI tools is based just on white males. So the question is, what do you see across government that is helping strengthen the capabilities of AI, but not kind of ignoring the experiences of folks who are maybe not, for whom data is not the most easily available or not most readily at hand? Are agencies taking this into account?
Sure. So I can speak to that a little bit. So, one thing that I noticed with the new executive order is that it tasks several agencies to provide guidance on evaluating bias, toxicity, and so on. I don't want to speak for those agencies because it's not GSA, but I think NIST, and so NIST I know is one. For security purposes, I know DHS was called out for some actions related to that. So I think the federal government overall is going the right direction in that, definitive efforts are being taken to create guidance on making sure that AI models are fair and responsible. So that's the first thing. In the AI communities of practice, since we have a relationship with academia, we're hoping to also help to accelerate some progress in these areas. When you think about bias and fairness in AI tools, there is kind of a fairness performance trade-off that also needs to be considered. And so to kind of define what I mean by that, if your data set is skewed, but it's large, then using that whole data set to train a model could have a performance increase, right? If, for the sake of fairness and representation, you pare down that data set to have equal numbers of representation in each demographic category, or, that you could see a performance trade-off, so a performance decline. However, some techniques that have emerged and are easier to implement now because of generative AI is figuring out what that distribution is in terms of categories, training categories across demographic lines, racial, gender, and so on, and then creating synthetic data to beef up each one of those categories. So that's something that's being explored. So I guess the short way to answer that question is that there are a lot of active areas of research that are being explored by both federal agencies and groups in academia and industry. And I think it's important for federal agencies to pay attention to what's going on. And as this guidance evolves for both procurement and evaluating tools along these different lines of fairness and bias and all of that, I think the key task for agencies looking to implement tools in the interim is going to be doing risk assessments and making, evaluating the potential impact of if there is some skewness in the model or some bias, what groups are affected by that? Is there external controls that can be put in place to minimize the impact of implementation, or should the decision be made to not implement the solution? Right.
Yeah. Optimistically, it seems like the fact that kind of bias is addressed in some of the government-wide guidance means people are aware of it and hopefully looking for it, and they're more likely to find it if they're looking for it than if they're not looking for it.
Absolutely. And, there's like the Responsible AI Officers Council that I don't have the date, but that's been, I think last year was stood up. That action itself kind of speaks to the amount of seriousness that this issue is being taken by the government. And then another thing, this is another old issue that now it's getting light with, all the attention on AI, but garbage in, garbage out with the data. The GAO Innovation Lab has done some data, now I forgot the term that they use. It's so basically a data quality review where you look at a data set and then describe it by data reliability assessment. That's the word. So data reliability assessment is a way to take a look at data and then see what the attributes are and see if that data set is a good fit for, training a model for a specific purpose. That's really important. And then putting guidance frameworks in place. I'm going to call out GAO again. They have the AI accountability framework, which is, I think, a really good starting point for AI governance model. So yeah, there's a lot to be still defined.
Yeah.
Making sure
sounds like still progress is needed. Avital, yep. I'd like to ask the next question of you, and I'm going to kind of combine two different things. One from your presentation, because Avital, you said one of our core principles is to empower, not replace. I'm going to make the leap that kind of suggests, well, there may be some people who were afraid of being replaced by machines. After all, artificial intelligence may replace human intelligence. And so I wonder if you can tell me anything about, have there been fears? Have there been instances where perhaps they were warranted? And if I might, I would combine that with a question I see from Adam Stein in the chat that says, is anyone using AI to interrogate a large number of applications for federal grant programs? And of course, those grant programs are one of the kind of the core business operating activities of National Science Foundation. So can you tell us, Avital, have there been folks who've been afraid for their jobs based on the use of AI that you've observed in your roles at NSF?
So far, thankfully, that hasn't, the concern over it has been more on the theoretical level, in part because NSF is still in the process of developing several AI applications. I would say that surely there is concern, and has not bubbled up yet to a union, for example, a union level conversation. There is definitely, I would say that it's more awareness than awareness to preempt that concern over being vocalized internally in the agency. I think people acknowledge that it is a concern that will emerge. Although, particularly for NSF, it is occupied by a very large workforce of subject matter experts, so that perhaps that balance is a little less in our space than in other agencies. With respect to the applying AI to interrogate applications, there has been efforts. There have been some efforts. We're still in the testing phases of how we could use some of the more advanced AIs for purposes such as this. But in the overall space has been geared towards taking a packet of applications and helping in the first step of organizing. So trying to reduce the burden for program officers in going through the entire thing and having to decide where the application goes. There is always a human on the loop, a human on the loop, and it is, I would say that there's been attempts to do this even in a pre-AI format for tools, things like word frequencies and so on. So this is a growing space that, in terms of the processing, that is the current focus of that's the current focus of what we're looking at, and also what current tools such as natural language processing could be done to help support those. Frankly, in the scope of things that we've been talking here, not too exciting, but it is going to be something that helps reduce that first step that we have to handle when we receive these applications.
Let me just mention off the cuff, REI has been doing a little bit of support work for NSF using some AI tools to help identify candidates of panelists for scientific peer review panels. And so it's interesting because, in theory, a person at NSF might say, well, hey, that's my job to find the right members of that peer review panel. But again, as was mentioned a little bit back, kind of the question of decision support that Dr. Keeling mentioned versus making the decision. Clearly, the software is not making the decision. It's presenting candidates that might have been hard to find for an individual human at NSF. And so I guess my question is kind of whether or not has NSF been kind of really a strong advocate of that, or is that something that as an organization, or is that something that's been championed by kind of one or two individuals to say, hey, this is a challenging task, finding the needle in the haystack. We'd like to use artificial intelligence for it because it will help make our people better at a challenging task.
Sure. But that goes beyond Adam's question a little bit, which is why I guess I didn't bring it up. But in the overall sense, yes, there is interest in the agency for using AI for such opportunities. Really, the need for you are either relying on the subject matter experts network of who they're familiar with, and it is a continuing challenge for these members or these staff members to find additional people who can review, so that they do not rely on the same panelists time and time again. This goes well back to the question of how do you ensure a diverse, improved diversity and representation that applies equally well and to the matter of who is reviewing proposals on a panel and who is saying what research is good or not. And so there's definitely a need to be able to break out of one's network to do so. Yeah. So there is. Overall, yes, there isn't a lone advocate within NSF saying this is important. There is a lot of interest in it, and there's some active development going on. And nothing I can talk about right now, but there is indeed an interest in using these tools for such purposes.
Got it. Dr. Keeling, the next question is for you. You and I have had a number of conversations, which I've really enjoyed, and in one of them, you talked about something kind of like a prompt engineer some new skill that we need to be able to make good use of generative AI. And so my question to you is kind of, we've talked a little bit just a moment ago about people's fear of, well, will they be replaced by AI? Can you tell us kind of what you see with maybe the prompt engineer as one example? Maybe there are others of, hey, you know what, there might be new types of jobs that AI can help create. What are your thoughts in that area?
Well, thank you. Thank you, Jeff. So there's a lot of discussion in academia about, what should be the future skills we should give our students as we get them ready for their careers. And this idea of prompt engineering is a skill that is becoming increasingly more and more important. And that is being able to ask these large language models to respond to our requests in such a way that we get responses that are, concise and to the point. I've seen a lot of experiments being done where AI is being used to actually create the prompts to these large models, to kind of synthesize ideas and make them very specific in the prompt data that we give. But if you've ever used these tools to, let's say, write anything, you realize that you have to ask it the right question in order for it to give you the response, and even then follow up in the chat with additional follow-on questions to get the response that's generated from the tool more specific to the things that you wish to focus the results on. So I believe that in the future, government agencies and other large organizations are going to have to hire people with expertise in how to ask these tools to support our work in smart ways and optimize the use of them, and to train others on how to use the tools in more efficient ways. This is something that I'm just beginning to talk to my colleagues about, and a lot of them agree with me, and that is we really need, as individuals, to become better prompt engineers before we can start to introduce this idea to our students. But I believe in the future we're going to see a job category called a prompt engineer, and maybe even an academic area or degree in prompt engineering.
Great. So one of the things I really hoped would come of this, I'll kind of share my perspective and see if any panelists would like to jump in. And that is, if we look across use cases, do we see some common threads that will help us identify new use cases at any agency in government where AI could provide a lot of value? Essentially, what can we learn from where it's provided value so far? And I'll hypothesize 2 or 3, but again, I would invite any of our panelists to jump in. So the first is kind of the example we talked about briefly with the NSF and searching for peer review panel members, which is maybe AI can help people look for the needle in the haystack, because a human can only investigate so many individual straws, and AI might be better at it. And perhaps even AI can help us find new different haystacks. So one kind of use case potentially in a general sense is finding the needle in a haystack and kind of assisting decision support. A second is, I would say, perhaps the need for consistency and a very high quality, and perhaps even related to a mundane work. So in that case, I would draw on the example that I think Nathan shared, which was kind of the photography of meat marbling. You can imagine a worker sitting there and kind of inspecting steak after steak after steak and saying this one is prime and this one is choice and this one is deserves to be made into a hamburger or what have you. But the question is it something where we really want consistency and AI can do something that is just of higher quality and much more consistent than human judgment? And then the last I would posit is we just aren't making really good use of high order skills from the humans. We're asking humans to do things they either don't like to do or aren't very good at doing, or just are frankly kind of lousy at doing. And so, I think of that again as kind of maybe the mundane work. So my 3 things that I'm trying to kind of draw as conclusions are finding the needle in the haystack, looking for much more consistency, and perhaps trying to kind of automate some mundane work. Would any of you panelists like to say, hey, here are, and Andre has his hand raised. Andre, would you like to say, what is it you think might be a general rule where we could look for use cases in the future?
Quite honestly, I have to say all of the above, right? I mean, you look at needle in a haystack, and you look at, for example, the work that's being done in X-rays, right, and the examination of in radiology, where the AI engines are already proven to be by and large superior to human beings in the detection of early patterns of disease, right? So without a shadow of a doubt. Right. And then, to a certain degree, the ability to combine that with brute force. I mean, you look at some of the work that's being done in protein folding, for example, and glycosylation patterns. And what you see is AI having, already a very enviable record that allows it to get into the 80-90% accuracy. And therefore dramatically increase proficiency over human beings. But then you look at just about every single instance of modern living, because at the end of the day, as far as I'm concerned, AI is going to become another abstraction layer in terms of the ultimate interval to sentiency, right? And so because of the power of computers, which has become basically unlimited, the availability of data, which is also almost unlimited by virtue of all of the sensors that we have, be they actually sensors distributed in manufacturing environments, or the fact that we're all carrying around these silly little machines that know everything about everything about everything. I think that the possibilities are basically unlimited. And so the question becomes, at which point, do human beings leverage that, right? At which point do human beings get augmented by that by virtue of actual enhancements to Homo sapiens sapiens that go beyond just the utilization of tools and potentially the creation of wet interfaces and neurological interfaces that supplement our overall capabilities with both AI and sensors to the environment. And so I think that putting limits on this technology is at best foolhardy. And we just got to make sure that whatever guardrails that we think we're going to need are going to be in place until such time as AI decides it doesn't want any more guardrails and tells you to go fly a kite. And also that the guardrails, have limitations because a lot of rogue individuals and rogue regimes will decide that the guardrails apply to thee but not to me, and not apply them with the same earnest, and wholesome behavior that one would hope that we would do. End
Absolutely.
of diatribe.
Great. Thanks, Andre. Nathan, you have your hand up, and I think that's going to have to be the last reaction from a panelist because we're running up on time. Nathan?
Sure. So yeah, I'll make this quick. So one of the use cases that I'm most excited about with generative AI is structuring unstructured data. I think the agencies have so much data already, but the task of data engineering, anyone who's done ETL work knows that it can be laborious and painful and difficult to take unstructured data and put it into a format that's ready for analytics. So that task itself, I see a lot of promise with some of these new tools that have come out. And I think just putting that effort to take your troves of data, I know some agencies that have data going back to the early 19th century, right? Like such as the railroad industry and so on, using OCR, using generative AI to create knowledge graphs and then, structure that data in a way that you can apply good analytics to, I think has a lot of promise to provide value.
Great, thank you. I'm going to say just one or two last words and then invite Dr. Keeling to close us out. First, thank you all very much. I learned a lot and was really enjoying the discussion from each of the panelists. So please join me in thanking the panelists. A recording of this event will be made available publicly on REI's website, and the slides that were shared, if the agency and panelists that have shared slides or prepared them are willing to share them, we will distribute them to all of you. Second, I am hoping that our next event, although we have not scheduled a specific date for it yet, may focus on return on investment in IT, because I think to some extent it's challenging occasionally, in fact, frequently, for agencies to say, here's the right amount of money to invest in a variety of different IT priorities, whether they be AI or whether they be cloud or whether they be app modernization. And I think that some more clarity is possible in that arena. And on behalf of REI Systems, thank you all for joining us. We would be happy if you would say, hey, this was really interesting and you want to tell 3 friends about it. You can refer the video, the recording to them, and or invite them to the next event. We usually do these about twice a year. And so with that, let me thank my colleague, particularly Dr. Harry Keeling, for helping assemble this and for creating a partnership between REI Systems and Howard University that we look very much forward to and have experienced its contributions to increased diversity, both in ideas and in people in federal technology and in REI in particular. Dr. Keeling, would you like to close us out?
Yes, certainly. Thank everybody for coming today. I want to leave you all with a challenge, and that is to continue to educate yourself personally and those which you can influence in this area of AI. It is moving very quickly on a day-to-day basis. Things and revolutionary changes are being made, and the more we stay abreast. And I want to thank REI and Jeff Myers in particular for starting, at least increasing my learning and increasing all of our understanding of these new technologies with sessions like this. So thank you again, everyone, for coming, and appreciate and hope we'll see you again on our next one.
Great. And that concludes our meeting. Thank you all.
Bye now.